This video is focused on HyTek and how you use HyTek's meet management software to support Level X racing in the months ahead. So the first thing to note is that HyTek has a number of software products to support swimming. The two most common in use in the UK is Team Manager, which is used by clubs to manage their squads and their meet entries and their personal bests and the times of the details of their various swimmers. There's also an online version of Team Manager called Swim Manager, which is used in exactly the same way. The other major product that is used in the UK is Meet Manager, and that's the product that is used to run meets, and that's the product that we use in my club in Surrey County Swimming and in London Region Swimming, and I think is fairly well used in Wales and Scotland. And it is Meet Manager that creates the HDR and MRF file types that are required by rankings to load the results into the rankings database. You cannot create those files from Team Manager. And there have been a number of submissions which have clearly come from a Team Manager results file, and those cannot be used by rankings. So you do need to have run your Level X racing. If you're using a HyTek, you must use Meet Manager to run the races and record the results, and then you can submit them to rankings. And I'm going to talk through how you do that now. I'm also going to talk about the interaction between a meet management system or a team management system and the meet management system. So for example, if you are using HyTek's Team Manager, I'll show you how you do that. Another common team management tool is Team Unify, and that will also produce consume a file from Meet Manager that gives you the details of the Level X racing schedule and all of the event details, and then you can submit entries through Team Unify into Meet Manager in order to run your Level X racing. So let's get started. On this web page, you will see all the details from Swim England of all the Level X racing documents. I'm not going to go through any of those right now. I'll leave you to read those at your leisure. There will be a couple of points that I'm going to make as we go through setting up the meet that you just need to bear in mind. So as with all these things, there's a couple of shortcuts. I will be providing the Level X team with a backup of the meet from Meet Manager that you can use if you wish to import into your own version of Meet Manager. I'll also be providing a Meet events file that you can use to import into Team Unify or HyTek's Team Manager or Swim Manager in order to process your entries and indeed your results. Okay, so let's get started with the meet itself. So Meet Manager. So this is the meet that I have set up. Now you can do all of this yourself, or as I say, I'm going to provide a backup of this meet setup, which you can then restore into your own version of Meet Manager. And that's very simply, I'm going to provide you a backup file. It's going to look, I'll do one now, and you can see what it looks like. Obviously this is now 02 because I've already had one in my swim meets folder. So in my swim meets folder, you can see here there's a backup 01, which was the original one I did, and then there's backup 02. So I will be providing 01, which is the first one I did, and that will be available for you. And all you need to do then is to go back up, select File, Restore. I would recommend selecting Unzip and Copy Database to a selected folder, and then select your Swim Meets 7 or whichever version of Meet Manager you have. It'll be Swim Meets 654, and then you can then open your Meet in the normal way by just going File and then Open, and it will go to Swim Meets 7, and it will list all of the available meets. Right. As I say, this is Meet. I'm using Meet Manager 7. The latest version is Meet Manager 8, which I've not yet downloaded. But almost all of the Meet Managers, whichever version you're running, are perfectly acceptable in terms of will all create the British rankings files. Okay, so let's look at how we've set this up. So if you want to do this yourself, then just feel free and crack on. A couple of points as we go through this. Obviously, this is set up for my club, Wandsworth Swimming Club in West London, and this is where our 25-meter pool is. I set it up as being the start date, and the end date is the end of December. A couple of points to note: age update is the end of December, so all the ages are calculated as at the end of December. I would recommend you use a standard meet type for all of this. There is a time trial option. I wouldn't go down that route. It just starts to constrain you in a couple of places which you don't need. If you do want to disqualify and provide feedback to swimmers, make sure you've selected the latest Swim England DQ codes. And we always use FINA rules for the time adjustment. Not that you're not going to really need that. So having set that up, we then need to. The other thing to look at is your entry and scoring preferences. So on this one, the entry limits I've set, so all of the events are set up as open events, just because it's much easier that way. You don't get any conflicts or confusion when you're actually running the gala. But this meet file, if you load it, and I would recommend you put in minimum age for open events as 8, which is the minimum age group set out in the eligibility for level X racing. And the reason for that is if you are using a team management system, then this will stop your team management system selecting any of your very young swimmers for entry, because those times won't go on to rankings. Obviously, if you do want them to swim and then have a record of the times in your own team management system, then if you use this file, then I would leave that open, just have it blank, and it will load up any swimmer, any number of swimmers. Okay, so if you are going to run this as a, if you're going to do the entries in Meet Manager, then very simply you need to create a team, select team on the top menu, then select add, and type in your 4-letter Swim England code in here. So if I was to create my own club, which is Wandsworth, I put the full team name in. Now, the recommendation from Swim England is that you put your Swim England short name in here, which is the 12-character name that is used and can be found in the club codes list on the Swim England website. I know that for Wandsworth it is just Wandsworth. So don't put in your full club name because Swim England doesn't have that. That's not one of the lookup fields that it uses. And then just click OK. And what will happen is it creates that team. Once you've created your team, you can then add athletes. And again, select athletes at the top, click on add, and you can go through. And the key records you need to put in is last name, first name, date of birth, and ASA or Swim England registration number, and whether they're male or female. I would recommend you select your team here and you start adding all of your swimmers, because it will the default team will be retained as you just keep adding. Now, one of the points is that this last name, first name needs to be exactly the same as is shown on the Swim England registration record. If it's not, you will get you might get your entry rejected. Your time might end up getting rejected. And obviously the Swim England number needs to be exactly right. So that's fairly straightforward. So once you've actually got all of your athletes into your system, you can then start entering them into the events. So what I'm going to do is to show you the alternative way, which is using a team management system of getting entries into the meet, and then we'll carry on actually entering if you want to add people into the meet on the day or whatever. But the critical thing is to get your athlete record correct. Once the athlete record is correct, then everything else will flow very, very smoothly. So what I'm going to do first, which is the way you would do this, is to create your export file for your your team management system. And you do that by selecting events for Team Manager from here. I'll say no. So this gives you the records that we set up in the meet. So this is meet age update 31 December, start date which was back in October. There are no restrictions on times and whatever. You say yes. You always allow Team Manager to convert any times to short course if you're using times. Select standard events and click OK. And this will now save this file to Swim Meets. And there it is, Meet Events file. So this is the file that I'm going to make available to you from the website, and this is a file that you can then load into your team management systems. And we'll do that in a second. So what you then need to do is look at your events. I've created the 16 events, the 450s, 5 100s, 5 200s, and the 2 400s. I have set the number of lanes to 6, and I'll show you in a minute how to change that. And they're all standard events. They're marked as not scoring, and there's no multi-age, i.e. they're open events. Very straightforward. They're all time finals, and I've set them up as mixed gender, so it's as flexible as it possibly can be in terms of putting swimmers into events. Okay, so let me just show you how to change the number of lanes. So in setup, you go to options, and here we can change number of lanes in final rounds. Let's say we've got an 8-lane pool. We can change that to 8. and click OK. It will ask us all sessions or just which session do you want to change. I want to change them all. And I want to go yes. So if we now go back into the events, you will see that we're now showing 8 lanes for every one of the events. The other thing to look at now is to what sessions you're going to run. And this is quite important because you will produce the British ranking file by session. So you need to be setting up the sessions based on how you're going to run galas. So in my case, for my club, we had selected the 50s and 100s for the first session, 200s for the second session, and the 400s for the third session. The likelihood is that is not going to be the way you're going to do it, and therefore you need to set up a session for each one of your each time you're going to run this event. And the way to do that is just add up here, and let's say it's session one, take an A, right? A1, you'll put some description. I always put in the date of when we're actually holding it, and you might want to go it's 02 p.m. so it's 12-hour clock. Want an interval of 60 seconds between heats, short course, and that will now. So it wants me to put it. So this is now added session 1A, and 1A has nothing established for it. So if, for example, you wanted to split the 50s, so we take the 50s out of here. And then we put the 50s all back in, so move all. Now we put all the 50s into session 1A. So you can now run the 50s separately from the 100s, and we'll come back to how you produce your results in a minute. Okay, I'm now going to switch to, let's assume you're going to do this using a team management system. So I'm going to assume for the purposes of this exercise, this example, I'm going to use Team Manager. Now this is a free software. You might have the production version, which is absolutely fine. But you can get this as a free download from HyTek. This is called a Demo Evaluation Edition. And I have set this up for an imaginary club called Hogwarts. And I have set up in here, it has no meets. So when you select meets, there's nothing there. It does have a team, obviously, because this has now been set up for Hogwarts. It's called a wizardry. Okay. And so this is your standard school, and then you'll have your short name, which is your Swim England name here. This is the normal way you would have set this up. And your it's British Swimming, it's age group. This is set in Surrey because I'm based in Surrey, and it's GDR. Okay. So that's the team. I've also added athletes into the team already. So Hermione Granger, Luna Lovegood, etc. Anyone following Harry Potter will know all of these. I've set up some dates of birth, and then consequently that's their age as at 31st of December 2020. Okay, so we haven't got any meets in here. So if we want to be adding entries into this Gala, we want to load the meet in. And we do that by using that file that we just created. So we import meet events. We go to our swim meet 7, and here's the meet events file. So we double click on that, we go yes, and then we do this again, and then it's read the file, and this is what it's about to load. So you just check that you've selected the right file, and you click OK, and it's imported 16 events, which is what we would expect. You just tab through this slot. You don't need to do any of that. So here we have, it's running at Ernest Bevan, it's 31 December end date, and that's the name of the meet. So here's the meet now listed in the list of meets for this club. So now we look at entries, and we do entries by name. You get a lot of these notifications because this is a demo version. So on this entry page, you've got all the swimmers that are in your roster at the top here. And down here, you've got all of the events that each one of those swimmers is eligible for, which obviously is everything. So if we wanted to enter Hermione Granger into the 350s, say, then, or 450s, then we can do that. If Luna wanted to swim all of them, we can click this button up here, which is enter all, and it enters everything. What we've tended to do for our club is enter everybody in everything. And then what that means is that when we import this events, the entry file from here into Meet Manager, it loads everything up. And then you can scratch people if they don't turn up or they don't want to swim. So but what that means is they are all in the database so that you can do all of that without necessarily being connected when you're on poolside. So let me do that for everybody. And you'll notice what happens is if any swimmer has an entry, their name is now goes to turquoise. Okay, so let's go back to Hermione and enter her and everything. Okay, so now we want to export this file, which is the entry file. If you've got times in your database, if this is a production version, then the time their personal best will come through into this result, into this meet file, but that's not necessary for what you need to do now. So we're going to export meet entries. It will default to this folder, just for ease of. I'm going to put it into swim meet 7, so it's all in the same folder. The defaults over here, you don't need to do anything else. You just need to make sure this meet is identified. We click OK, and that should now have copied it into swim meet 7. HOGL is the Swim England code for Hogwarts. We now go back into Meet Manager. So if I now go File, Import, Entries, and I go to Swim Meet 7, I've now got Hogwarts entries in here. I can now load these up. It's now telling me it's come from Team Manager Light, version number, when it was created, and the name of the meet name. You just make sure you've picked up the right file. Click OK. I would make sure just these two are ticked, so you are going to include no time entries. and you click OK, and it's now imported one team, i.e. Hogwarts, 8 swimmers, and 128 entries, which should be 8 times 16. If we now go back, if we now go into the Meet here, we should have the swimmers now, which we do. We have all of these swimmers in here. We have Hogwarts and Wandsworth, because I created Wandsworth before. And down here, we've got, for each swimmer, we've got what they've entered, which obviously is everything. So from here, we can now seed the racing. So this, we can now run the level X racing exactly as we want to. So if we seed the first session, which remember 1A was just the 50s. So select start seeding with 8 lanes. That's going to give us 1 heat each, obviously. We've only got 8 swimmers. And if we now go to run, we now have the top 4 seeded, and they're all allocated to their lanes. And if we select session 1A, we'll restrict the numbers up here. So we now run our meet, and I'm going to just put some. Now you can either run the meet like this, and you can produce a start sheet, and your official can use that to make sure everyone's in the right lane, or you can run it separately on whatever tool you want to use, whether it's Excel or whatever, or just paper, and allocate swimmers to lanes. At the end, you need to have someone writing down the time that is recorded by a stopwatch on the end of each lane to and allocate that time to the swimmer. And the most important thing is that record needs to be accurate. Once you've got that accurate, you can then come back and later, the following day, if you like, enter those times into this database against the swimmer. And you can do that. And I would suggest you just do that, note down which heat each one was in, and then you can come into the heat here and enter it. So I'm just going to put in some times here. Okay, so that's now up here showing done. And you would do that for all of your events in this session. And then you can submit you can create your HDR and MRF files from here, which we can do for this particular event. So you go into reports, results, you select the session because it creates the files by session. Select your columns and format and select British rankings, right? You've got all these different options in terms of how you want the results report to be created or shown. And you want to tick this British rankings one. You need to make sure you're not recording any splits, which you won't be unless you're running electronics. And that's all you need to do. And then create the report. Oops, sorry. You need to identify what you're creating a report for, which is all of the events in this session. Create the report, and it will say that there's a .hdr file. This will be the session number 1A, and a .mrf file. has been successfully copied to British Rankings folder. So if we now go into that, you will find that high sport, swim 7. Obviously, if you're running swim 6, swim 5, it'll be a slightly different folder name. In there, British Rankings, you've then got these two files, which are your 1A, session 1A HDR. I don't wanna, you can open them up and have a look using a text editor. But the thing to do is to highlight those two and create a zip file for those two files. And I want to call it level X and your session number so that you can identify it later. And then you just attach that to your email to rankings at Swim England or swimming.org. And that will be it. And that is all you need to do. Now, there are a couple of issues that we need to deal with. There is a way of checking that all of your athletes, the record for your athletes have been entered correctly. And you do that from Meet Manager. There is a way of doing it for Team Manager, but it's a bit complicated. If you're using Team Unify, you will have already done a check. So Team Unify makes a call to British Rankings and checks the database before you confirm the record in Team Unify. So you shouldn't have a problem if you're using Team Unify and you've used it correctly. For Team Manager, it's only a relatively recent option to check the record for Team Manager against rankings. You can do it in Meet Manager, and it's much easier in Meet Manager. So here we've got all of our athletes in here. So we provide an athlete roster report. We select detailed, and we create, obviously we want to do it for a particular team. So I'm going to do it for Hogwarts because we've got some swimmers there. We create the report. It will list the swimmers. It will list their, because you've changed this to, sorry, let me just go back. Okay. Having imported that name, what you should now do for purposes of this exercise is to change. So I want to change Hogwarts to its Swim England short name. So I've changed the main name there to Swim England short name. Now I need to run this report, detailed report, and I want to select Hogwarts. And I create the report. So it's now listing all my swimmers, the Swim England short name, the gender, the age, the date of birth. If they have a Swim England ID number, it will be in here. These guys haven't, obviously. We now export this using this export option, and we export it as a separated value CSV file. And we remove the delimiter. We say that our number formats are as per this report. Most importantly, the date of birth is English format and not US. Click OK. And it will create this, this file. Now I've already created one from my club using this, so I'm not going to overwrite it because this information won't appear obviously on Swim England. So having got that file listed in your swim meets, I'm going to call that Hogwarts just so we can see. We then go to our internet and we go to the competition entry check. And this is on swimmingresults.org. And there's an entry tools drop down. And in here, you're selecting your entry membership check, new, faster, HyTek version. Here's the HyTek Team Manager data validation option you can follow if you want to check it from Team Manager. So we select that, and that gives you this page. So I'm going to browse to Swim Meets, and I'm going to pull up that file that we were just looking at, which is this one here, right? I don't want to do Hogwarts because obviously Hogwarts isn't a valid file, and I'm going to click check it. It will now go and compare my record with Swim England, and it will tell me if everything's okay, i.e. this swimmer date of birth is okay. It obviously gives me the year of birth in here, the entry club, the main club, and the ranked club, and they're all the right names. Then, and that they're a Swim England registered, they have a Swim England number, and they're registered as category 1 or 2. Then I'll get an OK here. Then anything that's not matched, and I've got 4, I think, yes. Essentially, if I upload the file with those swimmers' times in, they will not load into rankings because they won't be a match. So I need to understand why that's the case, and I need to fix the problem. So I know that these 3, one is, I know the problem with these 3, and they will be resolved in due course. One is still registered with a different club, and the paperwork hasn't got through yet through the Swim England process. And equally, 2 of these are new members who haven't yet got a Swim England number. So again, once those are registered, they will all clear. The interesting one is this one, which is, as far as we can tell, is exactly the same as what's on Swim England. So we don't know why, and nobody seems to know why this one doesn't match. So what will happen is this will bounce. So rankings will want to know what the membership number is for this swimmer so they can process this swimmer's times. And I would normally now, when I submit a file, I will be adding this as an identifier in order to come back and show that the that this is a valid time, and then they can process if I give them the number. Okay, so essentially that's it. If you want to raise any questions, please go to Level X web email account, and we will be very happy to come back to you and answer any queries you may have.